Welcome back to the California Association of Realtors 2020 Virtual Conference and Expo. I'm Patrick McClellan here at the First American NHD and JCP LGS virtual booth. And this is part two of a three-part webinar series on emerging natural hazards and new disclosures of the 21st century. Back in part one, I explained how the disclosures in today's statutory NHD statement originated back in the 20th century as emergent natural hazards, earthquakes, floods, fires. We knew about them back then. They were always in the back of our mind, but we didn't have to deal with them in real estate transactions until catastrophic disasters made them impossible to ignore. And at that point, the state stepped in and designated official natural hazard zones and required real estate agents and sellers to notify buyers about them before the close of escrow. And that gave rise to the industry's first residential NHD reports, the JCP report in 1976. And then 22 years later to the statutory NHD statement in 1998. So here we are in 2020, and within the last several years, a whole new crop of natural hazards has emerged in California. And now we're faced with new disclosures about them that are already showing up in our NHD reports. Wildfires, because of what's been going on, top that list. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's part two of the webinar series. Okay, I want to begin by recapping the largest wildfire outbreak in California's history, and that's the one that we're in right now. It began back in mid-August, on August 14th, with an extreme heat event. And this heat wave was so extraordinary that California set a new world record for the highest reliably recorded temperature on the planet of 130 degrees in Death Valley. Well, 2 days later, a dry lightning storm swept through California, triggering over 11,000 lightning strikes, which ignited over 350 wildfires. And those red symbols that you see on the map on the left represent some of those wildfires. You drill down, you see even more red symbols. So lots of wildfires, too many for our resources to handle. So on August 19th, the governor declared a statewide wildfire emergency, called an all-hands-on-deck response, and requested mutual aid from outside of California, from as far away as Canada, and activated the state's National Guard to help reinforce the firefight on the ground. So this is what it looked like, and I'm showing you just a small part of these wildfires in the San Francisco North Bay area. You see the circle on the left over there. This is a view from a camera on the top of Mount St. Helena. And it's showing you multiple fires burning in the view of this camera. The fire in the near center is about 10 miles away from the camera. On the right, the Hennessy fire is about 15 miles away. And on the left, the Berryessa fire, about 20 miles away. Well, many of these small fires were extinguished, but many others grew and merged into a complex of fires. In this case here in the North Bay, this is called the LNU Lightning Complex Fire, which grew into a gigantic fire in its combined form there. So as of Saturday, this is a status report, current September 26th. And the map on the left now doesn't show you as many fires, but it shows you fires that are much larger, these large red patches here. And I'll just run through the statistics for you. Currently, 27 major wildfires are still burning. 10 of them are megafires, meaning that they have burned at least 100,000 acres. And I'm showing you 5 of those megafires with labels on the map on the left. In the North Coast Range, the August Complex, in the North Bay area, the LNU Complex, southeast of Fremont, the SCU Complex, and in the Sierras, the North Complex to the north, and to the south, the Creek Fire. Those 5 fires are among the top 6 largest wildfires in California history. One of them, the August complex, is approaching 900,000 acres right now and may soon become the state's first gigafire of burning 1 million acres or more. The Creek Fire down to the south is not a complex. It's the only fire of the 5 that is not a complex fire, but is a single fire. And it has burned now over 300,000 acres and has become the largest single wildfire in California history. Together, these fires have all burned over 3.5 million total acres. At their peak, the fire response included 19,000 firefighters. The fires have killed 26 people and burned over 6,500 structures. And the smoke has left the state with unhealthy air for weeks at a time. And these largest fires have exposed vast areas of landscape that are now subject to debris flows when rains return in the wet season. And this would be much like the Montecito debris flow that followed the Thomas Fire back in 2017. Okay, so what about these wildfire disclosures? Well, currently we have 2 wildfire disclosures in our statutory NHD statement. We have the state responsibility area disclosure, letting the buyer know if they're within an area where the state's fire agency, CAL FIRE, has financial responsibility for fire suppression. The other statutory disclosure is the very high fire hazard severity zone within the city or county fire department response area. But that's changing as of January 2021. A new law, AB 38, adds new disclosures that are mandated after the 2017-2018 fires. New disclosures include a high hazard severity zone, high fire hazard severity to go along with the very high, in addition to a new statutory notice that must be delivered to the buyer. And there's a disclosure for fire safety documentation for older homes that are not up to modern fire codes. And this would include the seller providing a low-cost retrofit list of wildfire protective measures to the buyer, and the seller indicating any known fire vulnerabilities of the house, if any exist. And then another part of that disclosure is vegetation management. The seller must document compliance with state or local vegetation management rules, ordinances, or regulations. Now, I have to note that AB 38 is not completely clear, especially about which maps, zones, and conditions apply to these new fire disclosures. So consult your broker or your corporate counsel before you begin making any of these disclosures. The new disclosures are associated with some impacts, I guess you could say, issues and impacts that are yet to be worked out. One of those is that the updated zone maps for disclosing the high and very high fire hazard severity zones are not yet available. They're still being developed right now. They expect to have these maps published by the end of this year, and they'll initially cover only the SRA area. The existing SRA disclosure focuses only on who's financially responsible for wildfire suppression. The maps that we use for that don't indicate risk level. Now, these new disclosures will indicate fire risk level, and consumers may be surprised to learn that their property, which was formerly disclosed to be in an SRA, now is in a high-risk fire zone within an SRA. In the cities within the local response area, the updated zones will be more extensive, and they're going to draw in more real estate that was not formerly designated as high risk. And that may come as a surprise to some sellers who didn't realize they were in a high risk fire zone. The AB 38 disclosures were enacted late in 2019, and that was, of course, before this current wildfire outbreak that we're in right now, which is the worst in California's history. So you can look forward to more wildfire disclosures being added in future legislative sessions. So again, the caution: consult your broker and corporate counsel before you begin making these disclosures. So the question is, why are we having so many frequent, large, and intense wildfires? Well, the simple answer is the cause. What ignited the fires? And that comes down in many cases to failed electrical equipment, dropped power lines, for example, accidents, a flat tire with the rim creating sparks that ignites the grass along the road that blows up into a major wildfire. Sometimes it's arson. About half the time, the state's wildfires are ignited by lightning. So that's just how they start. That's only the first spark. Why do they grow so large, and why are we seeing so many ignitions now? That's the fundamental question. And to sort of approach the answer to that question, let me just run through some more statistics for you. 17 of the top 20 largest California wildfires have occurred since 2003. And many of those have been just within the last 4 years. 2 of them were in 2017, the North Bay wine country fires in the Santa Rosa vicinity, the Thomas Fire in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, 3 of them in 2018, the C.A.R fire in Shasta County near Redding, the Mendocino complex in the northern Coast Ranges, and the Camp Fire, the disastrous Paradise Fire, also in 2018. And of course, this year, within just the last 6 weeks, 10 megafires, including 5 of the state's top 6 largest historic wildfires. These megafires are not isolated incidents, but they establish a pattern. And when you see a pattern, there's usually a fundamental cause. And that's where it gets complicated. There are several different fundamental causes that are being debated right now. Number one is forest management, or according to some, bad forest management, because for the last century, forest fires in California have been managed by putting them out, managed through fire suppression, rather than by fire prevention. And that is using prescribed burns or controlled burns to burn away the light fuels so they don't become heavy fuels that can destroy an entire forest. Before this last century, wildfires were more common, but they were lower intensity because the more frequent fires burned off the light fuels that prevented the heavy fuels from developing. Another fundamental cause that's been being debated is wildland development. We're seeing more combustible homes and neighborhoods being developed in wildland areas, creating a wildland-urban interface, and that increases fire risk. It increases the opportunity for ignitions as well, because more people are in the areas where wildfires can occur. And the third fundamental cause is the planet is warming, which is causing sea levels to rise, ice caps and glaciers to melt, causing droughts and heat waves to increase in frequency. That causes the soil to dry out and the forests to dry from water stress and insect infestation. And that leaves abundant dry fuel for any spark to ignite. The bottom line, however, is that all 3 of these causes are due to human activity. Forest management from policies of fire suppression over the past century, wildland development from land use planning decisions and constructing these homes with outdated building codes, and climate change, heat trapping greenhouse gases that humans pump into the atmosphere. So human activity is a fundamental cause for all of these wildfires. However, for practical purposes in the real estate industry, the debate is really over because the problem is already at our doorstep. The state is addressing all of these causes with climate change as its top priority. And as a result, new disclosures about wildfires and other climate-related hazards are multiplying, and these disclosures are showing up in your transactions even right now. So I've talked a lot about the general plan before. I'm going to talk about it more in part 3, but this is where these new disclosures are showing up because another new bill passed in 2015 that became effective in 2017 requires cities and counties to update their general plan safety element to address and disclose to their public hazards that are related to climate change. And so we're now seeing lots of safety elements being updated and these new hazards being disclosed in some of our NHD reports as well. Well, I've just added these last few slides to part 2 of the webinar because they provide a late-breaking update to something that's just now happening in California's wildfire disaster. 2 days ago, California entered another extreme heat event starting on Saturday, September 26th. We have temperatures again back in the triple digits and hot, dry winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour in some cases, blowing from the Sierras across the Central Valley and out to the coast. And I'm going to show you a picture that you've seen before here. This is the LNU Lightning Complex fire taken back on August 19th as viewed from the top of Mount St. Helena. And now I'm going to update that view here with a picture that was taken just yesterday, Sunday, September 27th. It shows the LNU complex area where it burned the blackened hilltops over here. And now we see a new wildfire popping up over here on the right. That's called the Glass Fire. It broke out Sunday morning, about 24 hours ago, just outside the LNU burn perimeter on the eastern side of Napa Valley. Well, overnight, that fire has exploded from originally maybe a couple of acres, now up to over 11,000 acres. And it's now burning on both sides of Napa Valley and westward into the city of Santa Rosa. In fact, into the same areas that burned during the 2017 wine country fires. It's a life-threatening situation for neighborhoods in those areas of Napa and Sonoma counties. And even this morning, tens of thousands of people were being evacuated from the cities of Calistoga and Santa Rosa. The cause of the fire isn't known, but it illustrates how several days of hot, dry, windy weather can turn any little spark into a wildfire. So now we're in a new phase of the 2020 wildfire disaster. We've got new fires burning that are out of control, and several of the existing megafires around the state are also flaring back up again. For example, we have in Shasta County a new fire called the Zog Fire, started 24 hours ago. It's already at 30,000 acres, and it's putting areas of West Redding that were burned in the 2018 C.A.R. fire back under evacuation warnings. And the massive Autumn Complex fire in the northern Coast Ranges is flaring up and expanding and may become California's first gigafire, exceeding 1 million acres in the next day or so. So as a production note, I need to add here that the situation's evolving very rapidly, but I can't give you any more of an update because I have to freeze the content of this webinar so I can deliver it to C.A.R. So at this point, as you watch the webinar later at the October virtual conference, you'll know already how this story ends. So all I can say is please be safe, be vigilant, and follow evacuation orders should you receive them. So let's take a break. And we'll meet you back here in part 3, where we're going to drill down into some of those emerging natural hazards related to climate change and the new disclosures that are just now beginning to flow out of cities and counties' safety element updates. So grab your cup, get a refill, and we'll meet you back here in part 3.